Social isolation is one of the defining themes of today's society, and it's not just a holdover from pandemic social distancing and working from home. Americans have increasingly been running home to relish solitude over decades. And that is the topic of Atlantic's February cover story. It is titled The Antisocial Century by Derek Thompson. In it, he dives into the ways all of us are choosing to spend time away from other people and whether or not it's good for us. Derek Thompson joins us now. Good morning.
Derek, so glad to have you here in a room by yourself in a state far away from New York. Writing is lonely business.
That's right.
I wanted to point out a very important distinction and then get to the main thesis, what you're arguing here. So we talk about a loneliness epidemic. People talk about the crisis of loneliness in America. But what you point out is that a lot of people hearing my voice right now may not actually feel lonely, but based on all the data and the argument that you've pulled together, they're still spending a lot of time alone. And that time alone is contributing to a problem. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you do have that right. There's a difference between aloneness and loneliness. I mean, there's many times that I spend alone. You know, I'm the father of a 17-month-old, so there's times when I spend alone at a bar or, just like having a drink by myself, and I'm like, oh my God, thank God, this is the next thing to heaven. Sometimes being in a state of quiet by yourself is a lovely thing. But chronic loneliness, being alone day after day, being alone more year after year, that's a real problem. That tends to correlate with much less happiness and with serious problems both for individual health and I think for community health. And what we see in the data is that Americans aren't just spending more time alone year after year, decade after decade. There's actually never been a period in recorded history when Americans have spent so little time doing face-to-face socializing and so much time being alone. I mean, that's according to a...
So, brothers and sisters, what has pretty much been said or stated is that there's never been a time in history, especially modern history, when human beings, especially those who identify as Americans, have been so isolated and separated from physical interaction amongst each other. And today we may see or think that, we're trying to find our space and our freedoms from others. But in the grand scheme of things, eventually this is going to cause societal collapse because it created an individualistic mindset, which means that people eventually are not going to see their counterparts as anyone who's worth building some type of long-lasting bond with. Bonds are what's required to build trust. And without trust, there's no moving forward. There's no unity. So we need to pay attention to what we're doing when we're saying we're trying to find time away from others, because there's an importance and understanding that we need me time, and that we know that there's a difference from completely isolating yourself from the group you say you come from. All right, so today everyone needs to eventually find out what group or people or organization or society, whatever you want to call it, whatever you identify as, you need to fellowship and be amongst each other, so therefore you don't eventually suffer from the consequences of not actually being part of a group of people. Let's continue.
Official government records. So that's the real problem here. It is social isolation, not just periodic loneliness.
And
Go ahead.
Go ahead. What's problematic with that, Derek? I mean, everybody needs a little me time, right? Isn't there also an argument for recharging in order to be a better person in society?
There's a very strong argument for a little bit of me time. I mean, I think it's really important for people to find quiet in their lives in order to recharge. But one thing that I think our devices, our phones, our screens do is they make our alone time more crowded, because when we're alone, what do? We pull out our phones and we spend time in the minds and crowds of other people, which are often very anxious, often very angry, often very negative and emotional. And sometimes when we're in a crowd, what do? We feel a little bit of social anxiety, we pull out our phones and suddenly we're alone. So in a weird, almost paradoxical way, our alone time is more crowded than it used to be, and our time in crowds is more lonely than it used to be. And this
So you understand what he's actually saying about that. He's pretty much saying that these devices that we utilize as a form of communication, or what we use to take up time, has been crowding our isolated time, our time where we're supposed to be truly recharging, but yet we're utilizing to separate ourselves from the group. And we're doing this during a time where we're supposed to be socializing with the group. So it's never really any true one-on-one interaction today with modern Americans, and for those of you who know that America was founded based off of the principles and the value systems and the laws of the English people, I'm specifically speaking to you English people, that you forgot who you are, and now you have been subjected and living this new isolated reality that's pretty much been perpetuated utilizing these devices that we call the cell phones, and it's separating you from the group, because now you're starting to have this narrow focus that you think is really only you. Like, you don't think as a group, or what we could say group conscious. You're thinking from an individualistic mindset, and once again, a lot of that's coming because of when you spend time by yourself, your own devices to keep you isolated and focusing only thinking on isolated things, rather that's when you're with yourself, or if you're a group of people that you don't feel comfortable being with because of you're not actually truly establishing some type of rapport or bond with those individuals.
Makes it harder, I think, to have true social connection. And so I think it's really important to recognize that, yes, of course, it's great that people have time to be alone, time to find real quiet. But the actual problem we're talking about here is not periodic quiet. It's the fact that Americans, the choices they make in the world that we've constructed in the physical world, are experiencing a kind of social isolation that we've never had before in this country. And I think that's a social experiment that has gone awry.
So, Derek, it sounds like your advice to people, if I would turn your article into a self-help bullet point, would be call a friend today. Make a plan to see that friend in real life and put the phone down while you're together.
What I want to do with this article is I want to hold up a mirror to Americans' behavior. I think we've made a lot of choices with our lives without recognizing the cost of those choices. We watch Netflix more than we used to. We stay at home much more than we used to. We spend 99 extra minutes at home per day, not just working, but eating and praying and doing just about every other activity than we did just 20 years ago. We make lots of decisions based on convenience and technology to spend more time by ourselves. And what I want to do with this is to hold up like a receipt and say, this is what you've bought with your decisions. You've bought more alone time than ever. And here are all these psychologists that I've spoken to who say that chronic social isolation makes us more unhappy as individuals and makes us more unhealthy as a community.
Chronic social isolation, it makes you unhealthy, and it's bad for society. I repeat, like he just spoken, coming from psychologists, that social isolation is bad for your health. So this whole new thing, they want to mock men who are out here, trying to figure it out, who have to isolate themselves. This is not good. Not only is it not good, it's not healthy. And then eventually what's going on to men is going to happen to women if it's not happening to women already. We now need to start putting these petty differences to the side and start realizing that there is a commonality that men and women both have, that we both must understand and maintain, so therefore that we can continue to keep living in unity together. The only issue is, instead of us accepting and knowing that we're vulnerable when it comes down to each other, when it comes down to our emotional needs, when it comes down to our spiritual needs, our physical needs, we put up these walls of defense. And only thing that does is make us become jaded, bitter, and cold, which in turn make you be more separate and isolated from the other person. And it doesn't always have to be from the other sex. It can be from members of the same sex, So as we see that what's going on today is not normal when it comes down to humans or modern people or Americans or the English heirs and descendants or whoever for us to be isolating ourselves to the point of loneliness, because this loneliness was going to contribute to more health issues in the range of heart disease, high blood pressure, strokes, to even death. And these are all things that you can go verify for yourself. So I would highly advise, for those of you who can hear my voice, that you need to reach out to someone. Reach out to someone who you know who can actually use a helping hand. Someone who wants to hear someone say, hey, how are you doing? I was thinking about you. I know life is tough. It's rough out here. But I just want you to know that I am thinking about you. We can get past this. If you need some assistance, if you need someone to talk to, hey, if you wanted to sit down and play the game, so therefore we can get our mind from focusing on these mundane things that's causing us to feel so alone and depressed and separated from the existence of our own reality. We need to start seeing ourselves as walking healers for each other, and don't expect that someone's going to tell you how to be that healer. You need to find it within yourself on how you can contribute to someone else, which in all pretty much helps to society. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, I love you. Today is January 21st, 2975 of the Berber calendar, which is equivalent to your 2025 Gregorian calendar, and it is the Sabbath. So peace today on the Sabbath, and we know Sabbath means rest on Saturn day. There's nothing spooky about it. It all ties back to astrotheology. This is how you get yourself back in alignment according to the Most High's calendar. And then for those of you who have been doing a great work, don't forget to continue to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Check out the Third Temple English Church of England YouTube channel headed by the du jour King of England, King Clifford Jefferson from the House of Plantagenet. We do need you long lost heirs to start contributing, speaking up, start letting the world know that you are alive, we are here, and therefore we can start changing our issues and our economic problems that's been plaguing us for so long. And it's going to start with us unifying and fellowshipping and coming back underneath the fold that our predecessors who left all this that we're still trying to obtain today for us in trust. Peace.